bad lawfare.
The time of the gentleman has expired. The gentlelady from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start off by recognizing that the felony convictions of a former president represent a first for our country, and that is solemn. I don't celebrate these convictions. It's disappointing when crimes are committed, but it may be even more disappointing when our country's justice system gets criticized for political ends. I, for one, don't always agree with the outcome of cases, but I do respect the process and especially the public servants who do their jobs. Now, some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle claim the verdict against the ex-president is, and these are all quotes, a travesty, rigged, a sham, that the jury of peers who assembled to do their civic duty delivered a, quote, rigged verdict, that a defendant afforded due process was part of a, quote, witch hunt, that the DA is, quote, corrupt, the judge is corrupt. Corrupt seems to be a big catch-all. I saw a judge that made rulings in favor of both the defense and the prosecution, and who provided clear, lawful instructions to the jury. Now, some of my colleagues say the Department of Justice, a federal agency that is part of the Biden administration, somehow directed the Manhattan District Attorney to indict Mr. Trump in a New York State case. Ambassador Eisen, can you please help correct that specific fallacy? What jurisdiction was involved with this hush money and election interference case? The state of New York or the federal government?
This was a case that was brought by the Manhattan District Attorney under New York state law. The federal government had no role in that. Is a fundamental misunderstanding, Ms. Lofgren, of our federalism to confuse the role. It's a conspiracy theory, and the Department of Justice just this week debunked that conspiracy theory with the AG issuing a letter saying there's no evidence.
So it's fair to say that the Biden administration was not involved in this case?
Not whatsoever.
Okay, and just to make things clear, it's fair to say that President Biden himself was not involved in this case?
Not involved in this case, and indeed has given extraordinary latitude even on the federal side to his own Department of Justice, including to prosecute his own son.
In addition to muddying the waters about the current administration's involvement, the loud criticism, ironically from some who say they back the blue, can really erode Americans' faith in the justice system. Now, that is a problem for basic law and order in our country, and I think it also puts lives at risk. The number of threats targeting federal judges has more than doubled over the last 3 years, and at the local level, threats and harassment against local public officials rose last year, too. Now, Ambassador Eisen, can you please talk about these increased threats to public officials as well as distrust in the system? How harmful both of those could be to our country's independent judiciary and really our democracy?
They're devastating, Ms. Lofgren, and one of the worst outcomes of the former president's incessant flow of disinformation, the attacks that you describe on the judge, the jury, the prosecutor, the system, is to incite those threats. We know that his incitement led to the tragedy of January 6th. We saw that in this body. But the constant flow, when I read the well-founded factual predicate for the gag order in this case, the sheer number and explosion of threats against the DA, they documented hundreds of these threats that were received. It's chilling. That is a tragic consequence of Donald Trump's irresponsibility.
Can democracy survive if the rule of law is eroded?
One of the privileges of my life was to sit on the dais in the first impeachment of the former president between the ranking member and Ms. Lofgren. That process demonstrated to me that a vibrant rule of law is the foundation of a strong democracy. I believe our democracy will survive, but we have not seen such a profound internal threat as this promise of day one dictatorship since, in my view, the end of Jim Crow or the beginning of the Civil War.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back.